exactly the legislation is and what it is that they're allowed to do, but it does sound like they have not necessarily followed everything to the T, and I can imagine the nuisance that it also is for you as residents who have to deal with all of this loud noise. At a time when you're trying to sleep, quite frankly, unwanted noise, unwanted inconvenience. So Thabo, we'll try and see how we can best assist by following up with a number of departments, especially because I know this is an issue that would affect people in different parts of the country, because there are taverns that mushroom everywhere and they don't always follow the regulations and get the necessary approvals before they open their doors. So we'll see what we can do, Thabo. Just stay on the line for me, okay?
Please.
All right, a very frustrated Thabo out in Soweto. Manda, you're in Cape Town. Good morning.
Thank you for taking my call. South Africans, why do we allow politicians to fool us? The ANC is coming up with this bill act that now has annoyed Donald Trump, and he threatens to suspend funding to South Africa and jobs will be lost. The issue here is not the land. The issue is money. It's resources that South Africa does not have. South Africa does not have the money, not the land. For instance, here in Cape Town, the city of Cape Town wants 2 sites that belong to the army. They were army bases. Those that belong to the national government. The national government, the ANC government, doesn't want to give that land to the city of Cape Town to build houses for the people. How is expropriation bill gonna assist city of Cape Town getting those plots from the national government? In 1976, in Transkei, the National Party government gave farms to Matanzima, and 49 years later, those farms are not producing anything. There's no one who's employed on those farms. 1994, certain things happened. White farmers left their land in Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal, and it was taken over by black farmers. Now, there's no production there. They don't contribute to the economy. And now you want to tell me that expropriation bill is good for South Africa. Let us not be fooled by politicians. Phil Ramaphosa promised in 2019 people of Alexandra houses. Now, up until now, there's no houses there. Do you want to tell me that it's because of the land? No, it's because there's no money to build houses for the people of Alexandra. So, expropriation bill is not going to help us. What the ANC government must do must reduce unemployment from 42% up to 6%. That's what must be in their mind. Not since the ANC government came, what we have seen here is the NHI. Is NHI gonna reduce unemployment? No. What they came up with is Bella Bill. Bella Bill, is it gonna reduce unemployment? No. In fact, Bella Bill needs money to be implemented. It is money that is not there. And now they come up with expropriation bill. Is expropriation act gonna help South Africa reduce unemployment? No, it's not gonna reduce unemployment. In fact, it's gonna need money, because once you expropriate the land, you will need money to develop that land. Where is that money gonna come from? So let us stop being fooled by politicians. They must grow the economy. What plan do the ANC government have to grow the economy? None whatsoever. Look at in Mauritius. Mauritius is the richest country in Africa. People of Mauritius are richer than us here, 3 times richer than us here in South Africa. Why don't they go to Mauritius and ask them, how did you get it right? So they must grow the economy and stop fooling us. And Malema, Malema wanting to jump into the GNU. What is Malema going to contribute there? besides wanting to nationalize land. Nationalizing land, what is nationalizing land going to help grow the economy? It's not going to help grow the economy. Instead, it's going to distract this economy. So
Yeah,
South
look,
Africans, let us wake up.
Mandla, I really, really wish that you would give yourself some time to actually just go and read the Expropriation Act. Go and read it so that you have a better understanding of what it says. And by the way, you're asking very legitimate questions, right, around some of the failures that we have seen around land reform programs in this country. And the questions we have to be asking is, why have people failed, right? Why is it that we're now at a point where people who have successfully claimed land, when given the option, are choosing money instead of actually of keeping the land? Because those things are not happening solely because people are after money. There are reasons that drive it. Some of it is around the fact that they don't have the money to actually invest in that land, to build up the infrastructure to where it needs to get to, so that they can work sustainably on that land. So I'm just saying, Mandla, that the issue that you're raising is a lot more nuanced than that, number one. But number two, let's understand what the Expropriation Act says.
Is it a priority? Is it a priority right now? Is unemployment not a crisis? Why don't we focus on the priorities and deal with unemployment so that people can have money?
Mandla, you have Parliament operating on a year-to-year basis. Lawmakers must do precisely what they're there to do, which is make the law, refine the law. And this is the outcome of such a process. So I don't think it's necessarily about this is the priority of the day. I think it's been, close on 10 years in the making to even get to this point?
Cathy, let's agree that unemployment is crisis.
Yes.
Unless those that are employed don't see it as a crisis. South Africans don't have food as we speak right now.
Yes.
Is the Expropriation Bill Act going to give food to South Africans? No. You know, Cathy, in the Eastern Cape, I met an old man there, and we spoke, and he said to me, you know what, we've got fields there in the village. I don't need a farm. All I need government to assist me to fence. They must ask me to put fence around the fields there in the village so that I can make use of that land. That's all I need from government, not a farm. Because what will I do with a farm if I cannot use the land that is here in my village?
Okay.
So what is needed is money, grow the economy, create employment, not populist policies and acts that are not going to help us.
Okay.
Look at Zimbabwe. Mantashe was saying we're not going to sell the minerals. Speaking like Mugabe. Mugabe said, Tony Blair, keep your England, I'll keep my Zimbabwe. Where are the people of Zimbabwe now? They are running to South Africa because of poverty.
Okay, Mandla. You've said your share, Mandla, out in Cape Town. Thanks for calling in, for sharing those views. You did make some really important points in that contribution too. David, you're in Uppington. Good morning.
Ms. Cathy, good morning. How are you?
Good, David. Go for it.
Thank you. Ms. Cathy, firstly, let me deal with the Trump issue. One thing that is what Trump is actually conveying to the world is that I'm here for the Americans. I'm going to protect what is mine. I'm going to protect what is due to my country. And Trump is doing that deliberately so because he wants to show the world that, one, without America, your life can be miserable. And secondly, Trump has got people that are actually giving him information of which that information is not authentic. It's actually it's information that is cooked somewhere in a laboratory of the Agri Forum, And thirdly, it's a total distortion of the facts of what is happening in our country.
Mm-hmm.
So, but what I like about Trump is to be decisive, to take decisions, whether they are sweet, bitter, sour, or anything. But he is going to take that decision, and when he takes those decisions, he makes sure that the whole world shivers. So, my point around Donald Trump, it shows again, Donald Trump is not a president that you can rely on. It's not a president that actually understands that the world America is not on an island. America is part and parcel of the global community. And Donald Trump there's this perception, Cathy, that I think I want to dispute, and I want to dispute it in the strongest terms that are there. Because I'm not of the view that America is the superpower of the world. It's because some of the countries have succumbed to what America is dictating to them. So now today, Trump is exercising that powers because he's been given a Hitler status of actually where you can stand at the podium and tell the world that this is the direction that we are going to take, and if you move with us, and then you are safe. If you don't move with us, you are out of the box. And then, Cathy, let me come to Agri-Forum. I want to concur and align myself with some of the views, even the view of Advocate Tom, because I read his book, and he's raising a lot of issues coming back from the establishment of the bundle strength and so forth. So, Cathy, Agri-Forum for me, I agree with the callers and the people that actually gave voice notes to say that Agri-Forum, we need to investigate Agri-Forum first. One. Two, we need to find out where is Agri-Forum getting its money to actually go around in this world spreading lies about this country. And secondly, it shows to us that Agri-Forum, their interest is not in South Africa, their interest is in Europe, their interest is in the US, their interest is actually where their motherhood is. It's coming from Holland.
Okay.
It's where Agri-Forum is actually sort of, because now, what they are doing now, it's tantamount. I agree to people that are saying actually it's tantamount to treason. It means that we need to investigate and go behind. If these people need to go to a court of law, so be it.
Yeah. Look, David, I guess the thing we must remind ourselves there is that this has been going on for years, right? It has been going on for years, and Agri-Forum has been allowed to do it. They have been allowed to do it. So I guess the question, the issue is that, you know, maybe we may have forgotten about it. We may have thought, well, we've moved on, but they have been continuing with their lobbying behind the scenes. Let me see where to go next. Busa, you are in Sky City. Good morning.
Good morning, Sister.
Yes, good morning, Busa.
Yeah, first time caller, regular listener.
Welcome to the show, Busa. Welcome to the show as a first time caller. Great to have you with us.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Sister. So, I wanted to talk about this thing of city of Joburg Mayor. He said they've got a strategy or they adopt something that they can able to fix the robot. But the robot are broken. I don't know how they are going to fix this thing. Because normally when you report those things, they will tell you this road is falling under local municipality, others is falling under national, are the one who's supposed to come and fix it. This thing is causing a confusion. Again, the thing again about this city of Joburg, the mayor. And if you can find a mayor or MEC of safety, Mr. Mpinachak. Now they appointed the new chief of police. That guy was working there as a deputy director. The guy is 62. The retirement for the city of Joburg is 63. So which means next year again in August, the guy is going to pension. They are going to advertise the post again. They need to look another new chief of police. Whereas this department has been without chief of the police maybe close to 5 years. I don't know how they were thinking.
And you have to ask yourself, what is the point, right? What is the point of it all? What is the long-term thinking, long-term planning? Yeah, look, Busa, it's a whole other conversation, the state of the city of Joburg, hey?
Yes, and again, another issue on top of that thing. There is a college. I don't know if you can send your journalist of SAFM. There is a college for that they are training for the police. It's here at Boise. That college now is being vandalized. There is a squatter camp next to it that they build the shack on the railway line. Now they enter inside that college. And remember, that thing it's a police academy, but it's been vandalized. So, and there is a student, but the student, they take them to there is a Veritas, there is another school at so they cannot able to use that academy now. They take them to Veritas. So you can ask yourself, if the police, they cannot able to guard their things.
That's exactly what I was thinking, Busa.
What about us, So if you can find me some Senator or Mayor,
Busa, you took the words right out of my mouth. If the police are going to migrate their operations, away from those that are destroying property or vandalizing, what chance does any other department have?
Yeah. You can ask that. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Busa. Busa out in Sky City. Okay, let me do this. Okay, I'm going to continue with the calls and then we'll take the break closer to the 10 o'clock news update. Anonymous, you are in Dinokana. Good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Cathy.
Morning. Welcome to the show.
Yes. Thank you very much. It's my first time calling, although I've been listening for over many years.
The callers are coming out of the woodwork today.
Yes.
Wonderful. I love it.
Yes. Okay. I've got a problem here, Ms. Cathy. You see, I was attacked in December 2022. You see, while I was here in Dinokana. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Anonymous.
Okay. So, I was attacked by two young men while I was visiting. They stabbed me on top of my head. One, I had a knobkiri and broke my jaws. I had to spend the whole December with my jaws tight with the kaditi. I went and opened the case at the police station, the Hurutu police station. The case was opened, and then nothing was done about it. No investigations were done. Nobody was spoken to. I had witnesses who witnessed the whole event. So because I don't stay here, I stay in Limpopo. My mom stays here. Every time I would come around, I'd go see the investigating officer who's in charge of the case. So he told me that they've not been able to contact me, and there was just stories here and there. It was just stories. Eventually, I went to go see the station commander, who then arranged for those boys to be arrested. They were arrested once, and then they were let off the very following day. So that guy, the officer, he never got in touch with me. And then in 2023, in December, this was a year after, on the birthday, it happened on the 6th. There were three sergeants who came from Klerksdorp who said that they were here to take care of cases which were not being attended. I thought maybe the case was being attended to because I was not here. They were in touch with my mother. So I came back this year to go find out from the investigating officer as to what's happening with the case. He told me that the case had been closed and there's nothing he can do about it. It was closed by the MPA. So now where my problem is that there was no investigation done. And from what I heard from the sergeants who were here in 2023, they said that the boys were not been charged. So that those boys were not being charged. The case was just closed with no investigation, no court appearances. And now it's really bothering me, you see.
Yeah.
Because these boys are very...
Rightfully so, Anonymous. And do you know, was it just a random act of crime? Why were they targeting you? Do you know?
No. What happened is, early during the morning when I was going to the shop, I saw one of them, the younger one, and then he was mocking me. You see, he was mocking me, and then in that manner, I addressed him and told him, hey, don't do that. You know, I'm older than you. I went to go speak to his mom. I told his mom that, you know, your boy is busy being disrespectful towards me and everything. And then the mom went and spoke to him. I thought that was the end of it, you see. So from there on, I left it as that. I went to, there's a nearby place where they sell alcohol. I was there. I had gone there to have a few drinks. And then he appeared. That same boy appeared with his older cousin. So when they appeared, I thought nothing about it. I don't think they were there to speak about that matter because I had spoken to the boy's mom. So when the older one came, he says to me, we want to talk to you outside. And then I said, what? There's nothing to talk about. I already spoke to the boy's mom. And then the older one pulled out a knife. When he pulled out a knife, I ran towards where there was elders there. There were elder people who were there. I ran towards them. He ran after me. He took out a knife. He tried to stab me on the neck. I fought him off, but he managed me twice on the top of my head. And when I fought him off, the one with the knobkiri then came and hit me with the knobkiri. Yeah, so I'd like...
Sure, what a story.
Yes, I'm dead serious, and they on my life because that's how I see it. If I was not able,
you may not have survived that attack.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. If I had not been aware and being able to fend for myself, I would have been dead on that day. So now, I need assistance on how to get this case reopened because nothing was done. You see, and it's bothering me big time because every time I have to see these boys, you see.
Okay. All right, Anonymous. Let me put you through back to Lebo because, yeah, absolutely. You know, the police have to explain why they closed the matter without investigating. Your life was very clearly threatened and you spent years recovering from that injury. Vuyiswa in Parktown North. I'm squeezing you in here, says Vuyiswa.
Yeah.
So don't shout. Don't shout. I know you.
Mamela mtansekhaya ilantu SAFM station samadoda. We are forcing as women because gender is not balanced here. How many men has phoned and I'm kept here holding, so there's no justice for women in this station. But anyway, I wanted to talk about Paul Kagame, the Rwanda issue, and as a parting shot, Africa. That issue of Rwanda, I think the problem is that our African leaders need to really change the strategy, the way they work. They can't be sitting in conferences discussing one thing for more than 30 years. Why can't they just close Rwanda out? Because we know he's the main problem with the European countries. And my predicament is that it's shame to Europeans. They're not even embarrassed on what they're doing. Their hand, ever since the problem started of killing Dr. Patrice Lumumba, it carries on, and they are a hidden hand. They're actually active. Your Apple, your big business. Why are they doing these injustices to other people? And yet Kagame knows. Actually, yesterday on CNN, he said he didn't know that his troops are on the ground. What kind of a liar is this? He called our president a liar, but he himself is a liar. Yeah. And on AfriForum, a great son of the soil of Zimbabwe, Joshua Mkabugo, he was a very close friend of O.R. Tambo. Utatu Mkabugo says the first time he met a liar is when he met a white man. They do this. If you land in France, Chadigon Street, the restaurant there, and you find them sitting backbiting the country that is feeding them. Because this is our land. We are indigenous here. We shouldn't be treated like as we're second-class citizens, like we did. We're third-class citizens once upon a time. But they still don't respect. And all these lies that they told Madiba, one day the universe will actually talk. As a parting shot, by the way, Malizi Mabradi has another sex scandal. We need to discuss this.
Who has another sex scandal?
Ubadi, he actually
no man. Yes. So where do you get that from? Haibo.
Oh, it's on social media.
A
cleaner. This time a cleaner.
Okay, bye-bye. It's time for the latest 10 o'clock news.
In our top stories, 4 people killed in KZN Tavern shooting and police launch manhunt for suspects in cash heist. Good morning. 4 people have been killed following an altercation at a tavern in Sundumbili on the KwaZulu-Natal North Coast. Among the deceased are 2 off-duty police officers. 4 other people were shot and injured. Police have established the tavern was operating illegally. It has been closed. KwaZulu-Natal Police spokesperson Robert Nechunda.
It is alleged that the deceased persons were consuming alcohol when an altercation ensued between one police constable and a group of 5 men. The argument was resolved peacefully and the constable bought alcohol for the 5 men. A little later on, the other police constable had another scuffle with the same 5 men just outside the tavern, which resulted in the constable being shot at. The second police officer also sustained gunshot wounds and was rushed to a local healthcare facility where he was certified dead on arrival.
Police have now confirmed that 2 Ria Vaya bus drivers were shot dead in separate incidents in Soweto last night. In the first incident, a driver was fatally shot at a traffic light along Wild Chestnut Street in Protea Glen. And in the second incident, another driver was shot dead in Mapetla. Gauteng Police spokesperson Dimakatso Nebuhulwi says no arrests have been made yet.
On the second incident at Chitutune Street, the eyewitness reported that he was the last passenger on the bus when he heard gunshots and took over. After it got quiet, he realized that the bus driver was shot. The driver was declared dead on the scene and the passenger sustained no injuries. In both incidents, the motive is unknown at this stage and police investigations continue.
KwaZulu-Natal police say they are looking for an unknown number of suspects following a cash-in-transit robbery on the N2 southbound near the cement factory. This has forced the closure of the N2 highway in the area in both directions. Police believe the suspects accosted a cash-in-transit vehicle, assaulted 2 security guards and robbed them of their firearms before stealing an undisclosed amount of money. During the robbery, the suspects fired several shots and 3 bystanders were reportedly shot and injured. The suspects allegedly shot at a minibus taxi, which they reportedly attempted to hijack. A woman was also shot dead in the incident. The Deputy Minister of Higher Education, Dr. Mimi Gondwe, has called on learners to consider enrollment at technical, vocational education and training TVET institutions in large numbers going forward. She visited the West Coast TVET College in Vredenburg on the West Coast to conduct oversight on the state of readiness of the academic year of institutions of higher learning. A large number of students face challenges relating to admission, accommodation and financial assistance. Congress says a solution has to be found.
Don't be discouraged if you cannot get into university. There are TVET colleges, and TVET colleges offer options. You can even do courses like AI. So they offer future skills like your AI, your robotics, your coding, So TVET colleges really have something to offer, and I encourage them to look at their local TVET colleges, such as West Coast, a TVET college, such as Goldfields TVET College.
The Director General of the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Jean Kaseya, has made a passionate plea to all African leaders who are engaged in the DRC's conflict to stop the war. Kaseya says the healthcare sector is mostly affected, with infrastructure being destroyed, and this is a ticking time bomb which could lead to the outbreak of diseases. In an exclusive interview with SABC News, he says this latest conflict has led to some patients being displaced, and this could lead to infectious disease outbreaks.
We need first to start by cleaning our own house. Let us stop this unnecessary wars in Africa. Let us come together and build. Let us use the health sector as the entry point for the development. This is my key message to my leaders today.
Recapping the top story, 4 people have been killed following an altercation at a tavern in Sundumbili on the KwaZulu-Natal North Coast. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Leading the conversation. The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana.
Did you go to the
Top Sport with Michael Abramson.
He's had a very distinguished career. Called time on his career about a year or so ago. Eric Durham, good to have you. How have you experienced South African passion for football?
Definitely. Today we went to a school and we could see like how passionate these kids are with football, and I'm very excited to see the derby. Good things about it, about the supporters, about the crazy atmosphere in the stadium. So I'm really looking forward to that.
And just take some earplugs because the vuvuzelas are going to be very, very loud. The fans love that. They love blowing those trumpets that were made famous during the 2010 World Cup.
Yeah, I just want to say I remember like trying to get the sound out of this one, the vuvuzela in the garden. Yes. I was a little younger at that time. It was nice to watch the World Cup 2010 in South Africa.
Top Sport on SAFM. SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
It's 8 after 9 o'clock. Welcome to the second hour of The Talking Point. Thanks for the conversation we got going on the open line. In fact, still getting lots of your responses to that, including one. You remember Mandla called in and he was complaining about whether we have our priorities straight as a country. Why we're dealing with the issue of expropriation when we've got unemployment and all of these other issues that need to be top of the agenda. Well, one of our members of parliament, Supra Mahomapelo, he's reached out and he said we must give Mandla his number. Maybe he'll be able to take up some of the issues Mandla is raising with the National Assembly. Hey, you never know. So we'll reach out to Mandla and find out if he's open to getting the conversation going. I think we must ask them to record the conversation. Don't you think, Kanya? We must ask them to record the conversation so that we hear exactly what it is that Mr. Mahomapelo wants to say to Mandla. And Mandla can also have his say in that issue. Thanks for giving us an open line for tomorrow, Mr. Mahomapelo. We'll get you in touch with Mandla. And then, of course, lots of you also responding to the different issues that we dealt with. Yeah, Dumisang's call was very funny about her son being angry with her. I see a lot of you also responding to that and equally laughing at what she had to say. Well, let's take a couple of your WhatsApp voice notes and then we talk finance with Brian.
This is Cathy. I'm good. Morning. Hey, this is Cathy. The state of affairs in our country is very bad, worse in the municipalities. For me, it's like when the new manager or something come in the office, he doesn't know the asset of the municipality. We've got schools which are closed here in Western Cape, like the other places like Dinell, which was closed. But after it closes, that place becomes a ghost town. Then it's where the vandalism takes place. It's like the minute we say we are leaving this place for something, we don't put anything there, then that place is just being vandalized. Then when you go and ask about that land or that thing, no, you can't, it's from the municipality. There's something wrong with our leaders.
Good morning, Cathy, and good morning to listeners. Cathy, I'm pleading and I'm asking that in your municipality feature, can you sometimes please this year host Greater Tubatsi municipality in Limpopo? Honestly, this municipality is rich in minerals, has got mines, but the infrastructure is falling apart, Cathy. The roads are a mess. In the township like Longtin and next to Steelport, you have township with Apollos that have been there, high mast lights that have been there for almost 4 years. They're not connected to the system. Cathy, it's a mess. We don't have service delivery in Greater Tubatsi, if I may put it that way. Please, can you host them?
This is Cathy Morning. I hope you saw that one when you were playing that song of Tulam Tanam. We were all singing, and then I'm wondering how many people were singing out there also. We did enjoy that. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Bye.
Good morning, Sis KT and your producer. And I greet all the listeners as well. Sis KT, can you please inform the government, especially the Public Works Minister? He must do something about Tefla Group. That company is getting tender all the side of Public Works and is earning a lot of money, but is giving the workers little money. Is giving the workers 4,700. Can you imagine what you can do about that? This company is robbing the people, like seriously. I'm talking for the something that I know. The public minister, also the media, he must starting to investigate this company. It's coming from Limpopo. The name of this company is Tefla Group.
Morning, Cathy. My story is on the Ria Vaya bus driver killings. It's the same as those particle bus burnings. Who is the culprit? Obviously, it's the lawlessness in the taxi industry. They are the ones who are going to benefit. So you see what happens if things are left to go on their own. No one really taking any accountability. They started by pushing private people from their cars, coming to the taxis. You don't have to carry people. No lift clubs. What? Now we see where it is going. It's going to the rear vias. It's a shame. It's a so lawless thing going on here.
Good morning, Cathy, and good morning to SAFM listeners. Hey, Cathy, I wish the Amazon Football Club won't disappoint me today, you know? I wish Amazulu Football Club, Yebe Usudu, they won't disappoint me today. I hope so. And I love because Ace Ngobo, he clarifies the goal of Orlando Pirates against Teta Too Much Team, Kaiser Chiefs. A clear goal. No, nothing. Clear goal. I just wish Amazon Football Club, I beg them, please don't disappoint me today. Please, man. It's Honorable Mapuka Kuban.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday. Talking Finance with Brian Hirsch, making sense of your finance.
It is a Tuesday. Brian Hirsch is on the line. Brian Hirsch, a very good morning to you, Brian.
Yes, good morning to Cathy and to your colleagues in the studios. I see you don't want me to come in there. You don't want me to walk those stairs. You're worrying about
Brian, of course I must, as I should. You know, the last thing I need is you tripping on a stair, and then the rest is history. So please stay put in your office where I know you're at least well taken care of and well air conditioned.
No, I'm definitely coming in. I was coming in this morning. I'm definitely coming in next week.
Yeah, no, I was told that you were coming in this morning, and I protested. I said, it shouldn't happen. It should not happen.
And only because I'm going to Cape Town today, so got quite a busy day. Cathy, just one thing before we get into our subject.
Sure.
I had quite a few calls from individuals regarding the two-pot system, where they say that monies that was deducted from their salaries have not yet been paid over to their pension fund. And I went onto the website to look at who the delinquent employers are who have not paid over money. And I want to give this address out. So maybe I'll give them a little bit of time to get a pen and paper. If they are looking at anything, if they're looking at their funds, they should go onto the FSB website to have a look if their employer or the company they work for has been delinquent in any way in not paying over money, because it has two effects. One, it means the value in your fund is lower, and secondly, you're not getting the investment returns on the contributions you're making. So I'll give the website out a little bit later to anyone who needs to check up to see is their employer delinquent or not.
How extensive is that list, Brian?
Enormous.
Really?
Yeah, enormous.
Okay, so basically then it's something that you just encourage people to do.
Just
to
have a look at
regularly
the
just go and have a look at that list.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Do you want to save it for later? Do you have it written down?
I'll give it to you now. It's www.fsca.co.za-regulatory. I'll give it again, www.fsca.co.za-regulatory. Go on there and see. I did run it down. It's an enormous amount of employers. I'm absolutely amazed that the FSCA, which is an acronym for the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, is not taking more action on this other than naming employers. Anyway, I just wanted to give that information.
Thanks, Brian. That's very helpful. And I wonder then if somebody goes on that list, right, and they don't see their employer there, but they have a strong suspicion that those monies are not being paid over. What then should they do?
Well, they should talk to their HR department and say, I want confirmation in writing. Is my pension fund contribution that's deducted from my salary being paid over to the pension fund administrators? And even want a letter from the administrators confirming that the monies have been paid over and allocated to my member account.
All right, wonderful. Thanks for that advice, Brian. I'm going to ask you just to hang 10 for me. We're going to take a break and then we'll get into our topic for today.
Mom! Yeah? Look, a golden pencil.
Wow, where'd you get that?
My Buco pencil case.
Oh.
I could win a bike and vouchers, and my school gets 20,000 Rand.
Oh, that's so cool. The Buco Golden Pencil Initiative. 9 lucky learners will find a golden pencil in their Buco pencil cases, winning big prizes and school refurbishments. Buco, building communities one golden moment at a time. Begin with Buco.
Buco. The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday. Talking Finance with Brian Hirsch, making sense of your finance.
Brian is on the line. So, Brian, I guess today then we are revisiting the issue of wills.
Oh, and I just want to make the point, I'm not a lawyer, but as part of my mandate to provide clients with advice, and together with all other financial planners, our role is to provide estate, tax, investment and retirement planning. Part of your estate planning is to look at the will, which happens to be the most important document you can ever sign, simply because if you and I have an agreement and we fall out, we've got many ways of trying to sort that out, including the courts. However, a will is final. The only person who can actually dispute and make statements about the will is the deceased, so you've got to go by the documents. So I'm not a lawyer, and I advise on wills. However, the drafting of the will is left to lawyers, and for that reason, I'm saying the information I'm going to provide today should be construed as information and not advice. I just want to bring to attention of individuals what happens if you don't have a will and what are the clauses you should be thinking about. So let me start with the first thing. Passing away without a will. So then estate law determines that passing away without a will means your state becomes subject to what they call law of intestate succession. In practical terms, this means a legal formula is applied to finalize your state, and you will have no say in the asset distribution your heirs and beneficiaries inherit, or you wish or carried out. That is why having the last will and testament is so important. And then apart from drafting will, you'd also discuss your wishes with your loved ones while you're alive. Very difficult conversations. I had one yesterday afternoon, elderly couple, 87, 77. They really didn't want to talk about death. But it can help to avoid family feuds and even legal battles. So often, particularly where there's a second marriage, children from first and maybe second marriages. So what I want to do this morning is I just want to talk about drafting a will and the considerations you need to know. Cathy, before I start, any comments you'd like to make?
No, you can go ahead, Brian.
Okay, so the first question in the will is who are you leaving your assets to? Is it a spouse? And remember, your marriage regime is very important, because if you married in community of property, each one of you share in the assets. So when you leave assets to a spouse and you married in community of property, you must remember that already half the assets belong to each of the spouses. But marriage regime comes into the first situation. The second thing is very important, is executor nomination. This is the person who's responsible for winding up your estate, ensuring all your assets are correctly received and that all your liabilities are settled and that your nominated heirs receive the correct inheritance. It's very important. The master usually requests South African residents to be executors. If not resident in South Africa, they ask for security, and it's also important, I believe, to have a South African resident nominated as executor. And often in wills, people leave assets to children, and this has become a slight problem because children under the age of 18 cannot inherit. And therefore, trusts need to be formed either in the lifetime or in the will to ensure the inheritance will not be paid. This is called a testamentary trust, and the terms of the trust to be carefully drafted, especially if it's a testamentary trust, and these trusts, remember, cannot be amended after date of death. But now there's a difficulty. No one wants to deal with trusts where people leave money to children and the trusts are anything below 5 or 10 million rand. To find the trustee who's going to actually manage this trust for you is costly. Firstly, it's costly, and secondly, the trust companies have got so much more regulations and so many more costs that they don't really want to do it. So you've got to think maybe differently of how you leave money to children. You can either leave it to them via the guardian or the parent, the surviving parents, or you can even think about creating what we call a bottom drawer trust, is where you leave assets to this trust which you create now, but only comes into being at time of your death, and then the assets are transferred into that trust that was formed during your lifetime. Special bequests will always be paid out first before the residue is paid. And you need to understand that you're comfortable with the amounts you bequest in your will that will be paid out first. That's to charities or anything else. You need to look at that carefully. You need to understand cash flow, because that's very important in the will to determine assets don't need to be liquidated or sold. and there you need to talk to your financial advisor to determine cash flow, particularly from policies. You need to take into account tax considerations, certainly bearing in mind that husbands who leave assets to wives, wives who leave assets to husbands, there is no death duties, although we each have 3.5 million rand as an exemption. But if there's a rollover, so assets that go between husbands and wife are free of state duty, and it only you start paying death duties over after 3.5 for 1, 7 million for 2. What's also important, exclusion from matrimonial regimes. I think that's a clause that's normally put into a will, that any inheritance you may receive from a family member or after your marriage is excluded from the marital regime. I think also what's important, and this needs both families to know, burial instructions, understand, and living wills. What happens if you're no longer capable and you're living on a machine in a hospital? Are you giving instructions? There's no point leaving it in the will, because often wills are only read sometime later after the person's deceased, maybe cremated or buried. So I think that's also very important to understand that your family members are aware. And then a will has to be signed. It's very critical that a will is signed to be valid. It must be signed by you. It must be witnessed by 2 individuals who are not anything beneficiaries of the will. It may not be signed digitally. It must be done what they call wet ink signatures. And when you have your will witnessed, remember that witnesses may not benefit from your estate. Is important. What you can leave out of your will, you don't have to detail properties, doesn't have to detail because it's dealt with. You don't have to detail vehicle details because that's part of your estate. So you don't need to complicate it by saying unless you're got different properties and you're leaving them to different people. So those are the important. The last one is very important. Who is going to be the guardian of your will to look after your children? Obviously, a husband and wife will look after their children in the event of one of the spouses dying. But if both of you die or you're a single mother, who is going to be the guardian of your minor children? And then, does that guardian still exist, even though it may be in your will that you may have created 5 or 6 years ago? And will that guardian still be around? Are they still in South Africa? Are they even still alive? So it's important that you revisit your will on a regular basis just to see if there are any changes. And particularly if there's divorce, make sure that you've got 90 days to change your will, or unfortunately, if you don't change your will in the 90 days and you've been divorced for 90 days and your will still nominates the divorced spouse, that person will inherit. I don't think you'll be very happy with that. So those and I think those really are the important components of a will. But don't leave wills, please. If you want any asset, if you've got a car, if you've got any assets that you want left to someone that maybe not your parents or brothers or sisters, because if you've got sisters and father and mother and you die as a child, the assets will automatically go to your parents. You may not want that to happen. You may want it to go to a brother or sister. So you don't need a complicated will. Wills can be very simple. Cathy, I hope that helps our listeners.
Yeah, Brian, I'm just thinking back to the last 2 weeks, because one of the, some of the questions that we were dealing with were, of course, stories of siblings who had been left a family home, and there were disputes over what should happen to that family home. And I wonder if we can maybe deal a bit more specifically with those kind of examples to say what are the options then that are available to people, especially when one group feels the family home must be sold, the other doesn't agree, but there is no will to sort of come back to. So that's where we'll pick up the conversation when we can.
On SAFM, I am on Delambana, and a very good morning. President Cyril Ramaphosa says he is ready to engage his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump over his threats to cut off funding to South Africa over the Expropriation Act. Kabaka police in the Eastern Cape are investigating a case of double murder after a 47 and 26-year-old man were gunned down at Arlington Waste Tip near Walmer Township, and 4 people have been killed following an altercation at a tavern in Sundumbili on the KwaZulu-Natal North Coast. Among the deceased are 2 off-duty police constables. 4 more people were shot and injured and were rushed to hospital. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
Taking a look at your markets this morning, the rand is currently trading at 18 rand 76 to the dollar, 23 rand 27 to the pound, and 19 rand 34 to the euro. Markets in Asia extended gains at the closing bell, the JSE mainly higher in mid-morning trade. Markets in Europe have extended losses. Gold is trading at $2,811, platinum $963 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $75.16 a barrel.
Santam can cover your car in just 2 minutes. That's faster than you microwaving your leftovers. Realizing they're still cold? Giving them a second chance. Realizing they're still cold? And eating them anyway. Because you've already committed to it. Get your car covered in just 2 minutes so you can live in the moment, not in the worry. Visit santam.co.za. Santam. This is freedom. Santam is an authorized FSP, a licensed non-life insurer and controlling company for its group companies.
SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays 9 a.m. till midday. Talking Finance with Brian Hirsch, making sense of your finance.
We continue the conversation with Brian Hirsch, and of course shortly I'll be taking your calls and your questions for Brian. 086 000 2032 is the number to dial. 086 000 2032 on the WhatsApp voice note line 0614 104 107. So we're back on the issue of wills, and Brian, I said when we continue you'd look at some of the complexities that often arise, but that have to do with shared assets where there's no will, especially where siblings are concerned, or where people who would qualify as beneficiaries to a particular estate are concerned.
I get hold of that call on 3 or 4 occasions. I wanted to get more details, because if you die without a will and the estate is over 250,000, which includes cars and property, then you have to have an executor, and the will has to be executed, and you're under control of the master. So I wanted, when you die without a will and assets are above that figure, then the master will determine who is going to be appointed as executor. That executor then will have to determine who all the beneficiaries are. Sometimes that's quite a laborious task, because there may be children and family members from previous marriages. And then if there's assets to be sold, the executor will determine. So I could not find out from that individual, because they never called me back, who was appointed executor, why the property was sold when some of the family members didn't want it sold. There must have been reasons. Maybe there were costs that need to be settled. Maybe there were liabilities, money's owing. So I could not get to the bottom. But all I'm saying is it comes back to the core and nub of this conversation. If you want assets to be inherited by parties, you need to have a will. Don't just think it will happen. It doesn't happen, and so often assets will go to people you don't want those assets to go to, rather than the people you want to. So think about it. By the way, this is not a South African problem alone. This is a global problem. 75 to 80% of people worldwide don't have wills. Can't understand why. Certainly different countries have different processes. In the UK we call it probate, but I'm just advising you can go to one of these stationery companies and you can pick up a will if it's a simple will, husband and wife, but the minute they're children, the minute they're minor children, get advice and rather pay for drafting the will. Your banks will do wills, however, and they will not charge you. However, they will then become the executors, and then there's a tariff, and you will pay 3.5% plus VAT, or if your estate is large enough, you could negotiate at the time of drawing up the will what fees they will charge. And then, as I pointed out, the difficulty now with so many where you leave assets to minor children in trust, and the assets are not significant, the trustees are charging, and only because of all the regulatory changes and all the compliance that is needed, trustees have charges. Remember, in South Africa, we pay in rands. In the UK, we pay in pounds. In America, we pay in dollars. So a £1,500 will in the UK, and that sounds a little, that's over 30,000 rand for drawing up a will. In South Africa, you can get a will drawn up for a lot less than that, anything between 1,000 and 2,000 rand. If it's simple, if it's more complicated, obviously the costs will be higher.
And for those people, Brian, because if I go back to the case study we were referencing, the value of that property was below that threshold. So if one then is, inheriting an estate that is below that 250,000 rand threshold, what are the rules that actually govern that?
Yeah, it's a lot easier. There's what's called letters of administration, a lot easier to do it. But remember, there's still costs. There's still a lot of paperwork, a lot of work that's got to be done by the parties doing it. And then the parties will determine, what is needed to be done regarding that property. And, particularly when a parent wants that property remain in the family, but there's no will, then it's got to be left to the executor, who's then or the individual who's now put in charge of winding up that estate. And that is why I keep saying, why is it so difficult to go out there, not be lazy, and do a will? It's so easy just to get a will done. It's just about setting your mind to do it.
All right, let me bring in Janusz in Cape Town. Janusz, good morning.
Good morning, Cathy. Good morning, Brian. Long time no talking to you. Brian, I've got a friend, my age, young person as you as well that, but she was one person, one daughter, and her parents died in a car accident, and definitely there was a will, but now she's waiting for nearly 2 years to be paid for that will, and she is complaining about it, and she said that because this quite 12 million, it's a quite big of piece of money, and she's under the impression that this money are put somewhere so what lawyers or whoever can take a percentage of them every month, and as you say, it can be complicated. In this case, she said she was one daughter of that, and the 2 years, and she still got not received any money. Is there any commission who above this can solve the problem quicker? But I don't know, because she's complaining. She is now a poor person. We had to give her money, even she's a millionaire. So is there any solution to that?
Janusz, there was a case recently that was held in the Western Cape courts whereby an executor was removed, but that was not necessarily based on administration. It was based on a conflict of interest. where the executor it was made it, the executor did not need to. It was a property where the executor inherited, and only when the estate was wound up did it then go to two other parties. But to go to the master and complain, all you can do is to go back to whoever's winding up the estate and put pressure on them. Go knocking on their doors, keep phoning, just put pressure on them to understand what are the delays. There are often delays which are unfortunate, but remember, and when you talk about there's a big advantage, an executor does not earn any money until the estate is wound up, and they don't charge their fees. So they do all that work so they're not delaying it, because the sooner they get the estate wound up, they can collect their fees. So this individual needs to go back to the executor, threaten the executor with going to the master, and find out what is the delay. Why is it taking so long? I mean, states can take anything up to 3 or 5 years, but put pressure on the executor.
So what is money actually sitting now? I mean,
no, the money would be okay. The money would be sitting in the executor's trust account. It would be sitting in an account. It would be earning interest for the benefit of the beneficiaries. Is no benefit. There's a small benefit to an executor who gets a small percentage of income earned, but that's not the reason for delaying an estate. One needs to understand, is there a vested interest? Is the executor one of the beneficiaries? And as per in the Buchman case, is there an advantage to the executor to delay? But I would say put pressure on the executor.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay.
All right, Janusz, all the best with that situation, hey?
Thank you.
All right, let's bring more questions for Brian. This voice note also on the issue of wills and beneficiaries.
Good morning, Cathy. Speaking to Anonymous here from Cape Town. I just have one question for Brian. Brian, what if you are in a community of property or married in community of property, and one of you decide that when one of you die, that 50%, he or she will give it to his brother or his sister or whoever he nominated to have that 50%. Is it possible, number one? Or number two, the surviving spouse, what can he or she do to prevent that from happening?
The only way they can do it is if it's done by way of the will, and in the will it's agreed, if there's a joint will or individual will, that's what's going to happen. That, in other words, if the spouse decides to leave it to the brother, then in the will she would say that my claim against the accrual, or in community of property, which is very similar to accrual, then they would inherit. But, in terms of when you say, is there anything can be done, it's part of the document, the will deal with that situation. And in other words, if you're saying I've got a husband, the husband's leaving assets to his wife, and the wife in turn is leaving assets, one also needs to understand how are these assets going to be paid? Where is this money going to come from? Because if you've got one spouse who's got assets in their name, and the other spouse dies, and now there's a claim for accrual, and that's all. I'm using the word accrual incorrectly in community of property. Then the question is, how is that surviving spouse going to get the money to pay out to the brother? So it's a discussion between a husband and wife that's critical, and that's why I said sometimes very hard discussion, but you need to have that discussion and explain what the impact is of that bequest.
All right. Thanks for that, Brian.
Cathy, I'm here.
Hi, morning, Cathy. Morning, Brian. I've got a question. The Barlow World BEE share scheme that was introduced about 5 years back. There was a listener that asked about it, I think sometimes last year, December, and then Brian said he would look into it, but I did not get the response from Brian regarding it. I'm also one of the people that invested into the scheme. I've heard recently that Barlow World is is being sold over to another entity or to another company. I'm unsure if this reporting is true or if if there is anything that he can tell us about it. The Barloworld says, I think the Barloworld share scheme is Kula Sizwe. Please, thank you.
I did report back. What happens is I get the question in the week, and sometimes I don't have the answer, which means I investigate and report back the following week. I remember it. I don't remember the answer to that any longer. I'm going to suggest that you get hold of me, and my address is www.bhca.co.za. If you just send me a reminder, I'll have a look at it and get back to you. Please leave all your numbers on this website. By the way, this is the website I'm using for next month. I've had a very good response. I will be doing courses next month. It looks like because it's come from all over the country, it doesn't make sense to be doing different. I'll do it online, and the course will commence around about the 15th of March. I know that's the Ides of March, and we will deal with, very simply, the money. One day, the money I work for will work for me, and what are the principles that I need to be concerned about, particularly for younger people who are starting to enter the workforce and want to understand, I don't want to make the same mistakes my parents made. What were those mistakes? How do I avoid them? And if you want to participate, you need to connect to www.bhca.co.za, and we will contact you probably the third week of February just to give you all the details, the dates, where you can connect. It's an education course offered to SAFM listeners.
Hello, Brian. I know that there is an insurance you can take out. It's like a bridging insurance, which covers all the costs of an executor in some cases of wrapping up an estate. Can you maybe point us in some directions of who does this insurance? Thanks, from Godwin.
I certainly can. I think I remember Harry Joffe from Discovery on my TV program in financial planning, estate and tax. He mentioned that Discovery do it. They've got a policy whereby they will wind up the estate. You buy a policy. It's obviously a policy. It's not a major policy. I think if you're under 70, I don't think there's a problem, but I may be wrong with the age. But you can contact a broker who's a Discovery broker, and they will certainly put you in and they will give you the information you need, because your state can, when you think about it, you may have a small state today, but in 20, 30, 40 years' time, your state could be a lot larger. The costs are 3.5% in winding up the state plus VAT, and so there's a policy you can take to cover those costs. Hope that helps.
And tell me, Brian, is there a particular threshold before one can actually consider taking out insurance for an executor?
Cathy, I don't think there's a threshold. I think it's done by way of coupon. Yes, you'd have to provide a little bit of answer a couple of health questions, but I think it would be done by coupon. I don't think there's a threshold. But on a small estate, you wouldn't insure. If you had a estate of 500,000 and you're going to pay 3.5% on 500,000, you're going to pay 17 to 20,000 rand for the administration and winding up of that estate. I don't know if there's a threshold. Let people just, if you've got a broker, and your broker, talk to your broker. There may be other companies doing it as well. I remember Harry Joffe talking about it on TV the other night with me.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break then. I'll continue with Brian. Remember, you can call in on 086 000 2032, your questions for Brian, and on the WhatsApp voice note line 0614 104 107.
SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365, Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za.
Ever stood in front of the fridge hoping for a quick lunch decision, only to find nothing? So you just order what you had yesterday. While getting your car covered online with Santam is faster than deciding what to have for lunch. It only takes 2 minutes. To switch, visit santam.co.za. Santam, this is freedom.
Hashtag SAFM Talking Point. Talking Finance with Brian Hirsch, making sense of your finance.
We continue the conversation with Brian Hirsch. Brian, one of the other questions coming in for you is, if you have GPF pension and you take money from the two-pot system, will it lower your monthly pension payment?
Well, you're not going to take money while you're in retirement because you're really drawing funds. But if you take funds prior to retirement, then it definitely will have an impact of your funds. The GEPF is what we call a defined benefit fund, which means it defines what you're going to get at retirement as a percentage of your salary compared to what we call a defined contribution fund, which defines how much you pay every month, how much your employer pays, and what that value is going to be. But both will be affected by monies you take out, either by way of the original vested amount and or the two-pot system.
And I'm just wondering, Brian, because it sounds like he thinks that the monthly contribution, that maybe his monthly contribution would be lower.
No. Monthly contribution is a percentage of salary, and that will continue. It's got nothing to do with contribution. It's only got to do what's in the fund, either as at the 31st of August, which gave you the one-off payment of 10% with a maximum of 30,000, or future contributions, 1/3 going to the savings pot, which can be accessed on a yearly basis. But obviously, if you think about it, if you and I are both contributing to a fund, you drawing money out on the two-pot system, I'm not. We've earned the same amount of money. We've got the same number of years to retirement. Our end result's going to be the end because I've drawn money out and you haven't.
Let me go to Moodley in Durban. Moodley, good morning.
Hi, morning, Cathy. How are you?
Good, go for it.
Good, man. Brian, just a question for you. I'm just about ready to retire. I'll be 69 in August, so I'll try to stay in the pension fund as long as possible. But what I need to know now is I need to get a financial advisor to handle my pension and do the investments and stuff, all right? So what is the fee, that I should be looking at, with the that the financial advisor would charge?
Okay, well, look, a financial advisor has two ways of charging. If you just want to find out advice, and if people come to me for advice with no intention of an opportunity to do business, I'll charge a fee. Financial advisor will probably charge you a few $1,000 per hour. But if you have good intentions and it is your plan to look for someone to help you, I think they would probably charge you 0.5%, no upfront fees, and charge you 0.5% for managing the portfolio, particularly if you're going into a living annuity. You know, the difference between a fixed annuity, where you fix the amount, the financial advisor will earn something up front, there won't be any ongoing fees, but a living annuity where there's work to be done, where there's communication with you to see how it's going, what are you drawing out of the fund, how's it performing, what funds are you invested, all the things that you are now responsible for under a living annuity. The amount you withdraw and the way the funds are invested. I think fair fee would be 0.5% payable on a monthly basis.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I just wanted, because I want somebody to administer my pension, buy the right pension for me, that sort of thing,
Yeah.
So it's about 0.5%, you say, eh?
Yeah. Yeah, and then also bear in mind it depends on the size of the fund. I mean, if it's a very small fund, maybe they'll charge a little bit more for the work they've got to do. Remember, financial advisors have got compliance costs, they've got all their PI insurance, they've got all those things that go. But if it's a meaningful size, in anything over a few million rand, I think, remember you're going to take some cash probably, the balance you're going to take in a pension, I think 0.5%. You can work out what they're earning. I promise you it's a lot less than maybe what you'll be paying your accountant or doctor on a yearly basis.
So thank you so much, Brian.
Before you run off, what are your post-retirement plans?
Well, look, this is the thing now. I'm not too sure. I have a RA and I have a pension fund and I have some money that was in the preservation fund, so I need to now start cashing them in and stuff, and I need to find, just to know what the fees are, because some people, they defer. So, like Brian has given me an indication of 0.5%, up to 1% might be reasonable, I think,
Yeah. Well, also just bear in mind your challenges ahead are twofold. That's for all people retiring: inflation, and bear in mind what are the items that make up inflation: medical aid, food, electricity, rates and taxes. They're all out of our control. We're not out there spending money. They pushed on us. And the second thing is longevity, understanding longevity. Are you a married man?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, then obviously the family longevity and what happens going into the future.
Okay, now thank you.
Good luck with your retirement.
Thank you so much. I'm enjoying it, though. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right,
Thanks, Cathy.
Sure, take care. Woodley out in Durban. Brian, here's one. I'm not sure if you've heard anything about it. This listener says they had Eyom Mhlaba shares. It was an African bank scheme, and he says, I've been trying to ask about the shares, but no one knows what happened to them. He only heard that African Bank had gone under. Do you know anything about this?
There was a problem with African Bank some years ago. African Bank has resurfaced. It's a very vibrant bank now. I gave my number and I'll give it again if people want to get hold of me and they've got any questions. www.bhca.co.za. If you send me details, I can talk to my team. We are very good at investigating these things. I don't know the name now, but if you send it to me, my portfolio managers and admin people will be able to pick up whatever information, and either if it's topical, I'll deal with it on radio. If not, we'll get back to you personally.
All right, Sharon, I'm literally squeezing you in here. You're in Cape Town. Good morning.
Good morning, Cathy. Good morning, Brian.
Morning, Cathy.
I just my 2 cents. Yesterday my will was wrapped up. Everything was wrapped up. It's less than 2 years. I just want to say, if anyone can, if they only can, go with an institution. Like my will was with ABSA, they were my executor, and everything went smooth sailing. I did absolutely nothing. So only if people can. I know it's costly, but it's worthwhile. That's just my 2 cents. Thank you, Brian and Cathy.
Thank you, Sharon.
All right, Sharon, thanks for sharing that. So, Brian, we're now going to wrap things up. Well, it's no longer your number; it's your website.
Look, I tell you what we're trying to do is we're trying to get that number back. We're dealing with Telkom because there are some people who don't have the facilities to go onto www.bhca.co.za. But if anyone's got any questions, just put your questions down, put your details down. If you want to join our seminar in March, this is the same number you can call, and we'll get back to you. Cathy, have a lovely week.
Thank you so much, Brian.
I shall see you
in
the studio next Tuesday. Thanks, Cathy. Okay. Bye.
See you next week, Brian Hirsch, out in Cape Town. All right, so that's where we leave it with Brian Hirsch for today's edition of Personal Finance. Coming up on the other side of the 11 o'clock news, we are going to take a look at the listeriosis class action suit. That legal action is continuing, but in the interim, there does seem to be some success, at least for the claimants who have been undergoing medical procedures needing medical intervention. Tiger Brands now agreeing to pay for some of those costs. We'll find out exactly what the current settlement entails and who then is a beneficiary of these payouts potentially. That conversation coming up on the other side of the 11 o'clock news. For now, let me hand you over then to the news desk.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 105 FM in Polokwane.
Thank you, Cathy. Top stories at 11. 2 security guards killed in Langa, and Ramaphosa ready to have talks with Trump. For SAFM News, I am Ondelambana, and a very good morning. 2 security guards aged 24 and 31 have been killed in a suspected robbery last night in Langa on the Cape Flats. Police spokesperson FC Van Wyk says the incident happened at Herigwala Street opposite the Langa taxi rank, where both guards were shot. Van Wyk says police are investigating 2 counts of murder and are yet to arrest the suspect.
According to reports, the security guards were escorting a delivery vehicle, and the last delivery was in Langa. On their way back at the circle, it's alleged that 2 unknown males shot at the white Nissan light delivery vehicle they were driving in, fatally wounding them. Nothing was taken from them. Both firearms were recovered in the vehicle.
Gqeberha Police in the Eastern Cape are investigating a case of double murder after a 47 and a 26-year-old man were gunned down at Arlington Waste Tip near Walmer Township. Police spokesperson Sandra Janse van Rensburg says no arrests have been made and an appeal has been made to anyone with information to contact the police.
It is alleged that at approximately 11 o'clock, the deceased and his son arrived at the Arlington Tip. While they were busy offloading the rubbish, the one deceased, 47, was shot while standing outside his vehicle at the driver's side, and his son, 26, was shot while still seated in the passenger seat. The motive and the suspects are unknown and the investigation is ongoing. The names of the deceased will be released once the next of kin have been informed and also identified the bodies.
4 people have been killed following an altercation at a tavern in Sundumbili on the KwaZulu-Natal North Coast. Among the deceased are 2 off-duty police constables. 4 more people were shot and injured and were rushed to hospital. KwaZulu-Natal Police spokesperson Robert Nechunda says police have closed off the tavern after it was established that it was operating illegally.
It is alleged that the deceased persons were consuming alcohol when an altercation ensued between 1 police constable and a group of 5 men. The argument was resolved peacefully and the constable bought alcohol for the 5 men. A little later on, the other police constable had another scuffle with the same 5 men just outside the tavern, which resulted in the constable being shot at. The second police officer also sustained gunshot wounds and was rushed to a local healthcare facility where he was certified dead on arrival.
The Department of Mineral and Petroleum Resources have confirmed that petrol and diesel prices will increase substantially from midnight. The department says both grades of petrol will increase by 82 cents a litre, while diesel will go up by 1 rand 1 cent and 1 rand 5 cents a litre. At the same time, the price of illuminating paraffin will jump by 1 rand 29 cents a litre at retail level, and LP gas will rise by 42 cents per kilogram. The department's Robert Magé has attributed the price hikes to a weaker rand and higher oil prices. Johannesburg Mayor Dada Morero says everything possible will be done to protect Rea Vaya bus commuters and drivers. This follows the fatal shooting of 2 bus drivers in separate incidents in Protea Glen and Mapetla in Soweto last night. All Rea Vaya bus services across the city have since been suspended until further notice. The motive for the killings is unknown at this stage. City of Johannesburg spokesperson Virgil James.
The Executive Mayor of the City of Johannesburg, Councillor Dada Morero, together with his mayoral committee and city manager, have expressed their shock and dismay at the senseless killing of 2 Rea Vaya bus drivers and expressed their deepest condolences to family and friends. The city has subsequently suspended all bus operations until further notice, pending a plan of action to escort and protect drivers and buses from further possible attacks.
President Cyril Ramaphosa says he is ready to engage his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump over his threats to cut off funding to South Africa over the Expropriation Act. The furor has also led to International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola clarifying that the act is not a means to illegally dispossess certain classes of people, as per the concerns expressed by the U.S. President.
The Expropriation Act does not provide for arbitrary deprivation of property or confiscation, as President Trump has pointed out, but it's a process that is firm and which is dependent on the law itself. It is also in line with our constitution, but it's also not an exceptional type of law. All countries across the globe have a law that empowers government to act in the public interest.
Recapping the top story, 2 security guards aged 24 and 31 have been killed in a suspected robbery last night in Langa on the Cape Flats. I am on Delambana for SFM News headlines at 11:30.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Leading the conversation.
Are you looking for the best spectacle and sunglass deal? At Specsavers, get a free pair of branded prescription sunglasses up to 3,200 Rand. Affordable eye care, Specsavers. T's and C's apply.
The National School Nutrition Program and social grants are instrumental in ensuring that children's needs for food and other essential services are met. We need a minimum health promotion levy of 20% on all sugary drinks to support social protection initiatives. Find out more on the next episode of Chew on This at heala.org, HEALA.org, on 30 January from 3 p.m.
SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
Morning, Cathy. Please ask your listeners not to call Limpopo Limpombo. There's no Limpombo. It's Limpopo. Please ask them to pronounce it very well. Thank you. Moato.
Good morning, Cathy. I think land expropriation is a very, very good agenda that we need to address. Cathy, I'm from the farms. My grandfathers, my grandmothers, and my fathers have been evicted illegally from the farms. I still have that a wound inside my chest. I wanted to go back to the farm and produce vegetable that we used to produce from the farm. Now, how can I produce that without land? Land without expropriation is very essential, and it needs to be addressed with a speedy way. Thank you. Kabelo Mokoti Extension 19, Jubetina, thank you.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
Well, 7 years ago, the listeriosis outbreak in South Africa claimed 218 lives. It resulted in more than 1,000 infections. Lawyers representing claimants in the listeriosis class action against South African food producer Tiger Brands have announced an agreement that will see claimants receive advance payments. This is particularly with regard to the urgent medical needs that some of them might need as the class action continues. To join us on this conversation is Richard Spoor. He is a founding director at Richard Spoor Inc. Attorneys and part of the legal team representing the claimants in the class action. Richard, good morning to you. Thank you for your time this morning.
Good morning, Cathy. Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Mthokozisi Nkosi is the CEO of AS Consultants Public Health and Food Safety, and he consults on food safety and the role of regulations for retail outlets in the formal and informal economies. Mthokozisi, good morning to you. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, Cathy. Thank you for having me. Good morning to you and to the listeners at home.
Of course, we did reach out to Tiger Brands as well, invited them to be part of the conversation. They weren't able to participate, but they did send a voice note through their Chief Legal and Corporate Affairs Officer, Joe Ralebeba, who has stated the company's position on this matter. Before I get into what Tiger Brands has had to say, Richard, it seems unbelievable that it's been 7 years since that listeriosis outbreak, and what a fight it has been by the claimants. And I think if we look back to what happened at the time, certainly unimaginable that the class action or legal action would still be ongoing at this point.
Yes, it is disappointing. And unfortunately, there's still a long way to go. We hope for a ruling on the merits of the claim in the course of this year. But sorting out the damages and the claims of each individual member of the class is still going to take a considerable while longer. So I think we still have another 2 or 3 years to run in this matter, barring any unexpected obstacles.
Why has it been so difficult, Richard? Because if we go back to, again, what happened at the time, I mean, people were sharing stories of how they had just, bought Viennas, they bought whatever product that they had bought that was part of the contaminated products that we now know had been out and available for sale for the public. What has been so difficult about then being able to get Tiger Brands to take accountability in as far as what the implications of that contaminated product being consumed has been?
Well, I can account for at least 4 of the years quite easily. First, Tiger issued a subpoena against, across the board, against meat producers and food testing laboratories around the country, asking them to disclose the results of all listeria testing that they had done over the period of the outbreak and before it. That subpoena was opposed by the meat producers and the laboratories. And the case then ran a two-year detour through the courts and through the Supreme Court of Appeal before that subpoena was finally dismissed, and we were able to move on. We were then hit with the COVID outbreak, and a lot of the data, the critical data that we need to prove our case, sits with the National Institute of Communicable Diseases, which is the laboratory that was doing the genetic testing on all the samples that were taken. During the COVID outbreak, they didn't have the capacity and resources to attend to our requests and to provide any assistance, which was another 2 years before they could get around to dealing with the issues that we had raised. And since then, we have been making substantial progress, but we still have outstanding information and data that we're battling to get from the NICD, which falls under the National Health Laboratory Services, which falls under the Department of Health. And there's an ongoing battle to get it. There's a difference between the parties about how much of that information is necessary. Our view is we have what we need to run the case, but the view of the attorneys opposing the matter are saying, look, there's still more information that we require for our defense. And recently a new subpoena was issued against the NICD by the defendants in this case, asking for further information that they say that they require to properly consider and prepare their defense. Then of course these are complex and difficult matters. We've got experts, geneticists, epidemiologists, bacteriological specialists from the United States and from Europe on board, and putting together their statements and putting together their evidence is a big job. Finding the victims has been a massive job. It's an ongoing process. There's an independent third-party contractor that was appointed with the agreement of the Department of Health to locate victims off a list of victims, a confidential list that the Department of Health has in its possession. Of the approximately 1,000 people on that list, we've located the consultant has identified about 600, but there's another 300 or so that are still have to be located. They've spread across the country. And those efforts are ongoing. Of course, once people have been contacted, advised that they may participate in this case, they make an approach to us, if they want to join the case, that is, and then starts a process of getting all their medical records, all their personal information, and putting it all together, trying to connect them with the outbreak, taking statements from them, assessing their injuries, and their damages, the costs associated with past medical costs, loss of earnings, future loss of earnings. It is a very large and very difficult and very challenging case to prosecute.
Richard, I remember reading a story, and I was trying to pull it up, but I can't seem to find it so quickly. It must have been about in the past month, but it was definitely this year, where a lady, and she's out in Limpopo, was on the verge of losing her property because she says that when she was pregnant, all she would eat was Viennas because of her cravings and whatever else. And she then, was affected by the bacteria, but it affected her unborn child at the time, who then was born with all sorts of complications. And, she details how they've had to pay so much money to deal with that. And the sense that the story left me with, and it's similar to sort of other stories that I've seen, is that claimants feeling that they have to literally go above and beyond to prove that, in fact, whatever conditions that they are suffering from were as a result of eating the contaminated food. How much of that is presenting as a challenge to you as the lawyers that are involved in this matter? But I would imagine also for a company like Tiger Brands, of course, they can't just take whatever a claimant says. Otherwise they'd have to do that with everybody. But it did seem to me that, when I read about the medical files she had presented, that this is somebody who had a very legitimate claim.
Yeah. But, if we look at a breakdown of the 937 cases on the NICD database, and we just have a look at the profile of the people involved, of those 937, 465 were pregnant women. 400 cases involve neonates, that's, unborn, newborn children. 6% involve young children. There were also a significant number of people whose immune system was compromised from other causes. Pregnancy, curiously, is one of those things that compromises people's immune system, so they are particularly vulnerable to this kind of bacteria. And then we've got a large 10% of the people are people 65 years and older. How do you prove that they're involved? Well, there are a couple of kind of levels of proof. The best and strongest cases are those where we have a perfect genetic match between the isolates, which means the samples and the bacteria samples that were taken from clinical victims, and which have been matched through an enormously complex and expensive process by the NICD, and in this regard they did an incredible job, where we literally have proof that 350 of the people have exactly the same match, literally clones. So there's a clone, and now to find bacteria, even one type of bacteria, is incredibly diverse. These things reproduce and mutate continuously. So the genetic sequence of a Listeria bug is 3 million base pairs. So 3 million little pairs of bases that comprise the DNA of this. Now with 350 people, we have an exact genetic match, or a match so close that it is closer than the genetic match between identical twins, literally clones. However, it's not as if that testing, that kind of detailed sequencing, which is expensive and difficult, hasn't been done for the bulk, the rest of the people. So we've got 350 people. We can link them, match them perfectly to the outbreak. We can say with a level of confidence approaching certainty that they got this bug from the factory and from Tiger's product. Then there's another category of people where they isolate the samples, the blood samples that were cultured and the bugs that were then sequenced. A kind of a less specific type of genetic testing was done. The kind of genetic testing you use to prove paternity or to prove the identity of a rapist, which is less precise, a lot less precise, but which gives you a very high degree of confidence, certainly sufficient to convict a rapist or to prove paternity that this is the same bug. So we got another bunch of people. We know it's the same thing. It's overwhelmingly similar, but we can't prove it's an exact clone. Then we got another bunch of people who all we know is they got sick during the outbreak period, and they've been infected by this particular bug, Listeria monocytogenes. Now, those people, so how do we prove that those people got Listeria from consuming Tiger Brands? Well, Tiger Brands products. Well, in the first instance, they say that they consumed the product. They can show that they consumed the product, and then within a very short period of time, the incubation period of Listeria, they contracted the disease. Now, you can argue, oh, that's not proof. They could have got it from somewhere else. But then you have to bear another factor into account. So typically in South Africa, we have about 20 listeriosis cases per annum, per year. So out of a population of 60 million people, you have 20 cases per year. So it's actually quite a rare disease. During this 18-month period, we had well over 1,000 cases. And these people who say they consumed the product and became sick with Listeria, consumed the product and became sick during that period. So you say, well, if I've said that I ate the product and I can show that I did, and I got sick during this period, what are the chances that I got it from anybody else or anything else? We say that those chances are vanishingly small. We say overwhelmingly, if only 20 out of 60 million get in the ordinary course, but during a period where we know there were 1,000 cases plus coming from Tiger Brands, and you got listeriosis during this period, then on a balance of probabilities, it's clear that Tiger is responsible. So those are the kinds of arguments we are developing, but they require expertise of genetics and of statistics and probabilities that we rely on to prove the case. We think it's pretty clear-cut. We think it's an overwhelmingly strong case, but Tiger is saying, well, prove it in court.
Given then where we are with things right now, Richard, especially the case that is ongoing, and you said you're still a couple of years off from actually finalizing the class action, that means that the settlement reached currently, it makes it even more significant, doesn't it?
Well, it's not really a settlement. I mean, we have been talking to Tiger for a long time. We're saying to them, we've presented expert reports, and we're saying to them, guys, look, this is our case. This is the strength of the case. And in the meantime, we have people who we can match, genetically to the outbreak. These are children who are suffering enormously, who need care that they cannot afford. Please come to the party, please contribute, please help. So, Tiger's position, which is perfectly legitimate, everybody's entitled to insist that the other side prove their case before a court of law, have decided that, yes, we will come in and we will provide some relief to these very desperate cases. And that is obviously a very positive thing. It certainly makes a big difference to these kids. But it's not done with an acknowledgement of liability or an admission of liability. It is done on a completely, without prejudice basis, without admission of liability basis. But it is, I think it's the product of ongoing engagement between us, an increased level of trust and confidence, and I hope a kind of an understanding on the part of Tiger that the outcome of this case is, we think, a foregone conclusion, and it's just as well that they take steps now, rather than be compelled to do so years later when the damage that these kids have suffered has become even worse. With young people who have special needs and need teaching and therapy and support, delaying that is problematic. The same holds true for women who miscarried or who had stillbirths. Many of them have been through terrible trauma. I know of one of my clients is a young woman from a very conservative home, religious home. She became pregnant. The boyfriend somewhat grudgingly agreed to get married. They were all lined up. The wedding was on the line. The family had been invited. Big deal, fantastic thing. She got listeriosis after consuming polony. She miscarried. The boyfriend called off the wedding 2 weeks before. She was a young woman and conservative community, conservative things. She locked herself up in a room and basically cried for 6 months. Now that young woman and others in similar circumstances, need help, need therapy, need something. And I have other people, clients, who battled for years through IVF to get pregnant, finally got pregnant with twins, and lost both of them, and now is permanently infertile. Those are terrible consequences.
Yeah, sure.
And they need help and counselling too. And when this thing finally comes through, it's a bit late. But look, the legal system in South Africa is also fairly dysfunctional. We work with.
Richard, I'm going to pause you there. But absolutely, it is about the human lives that have been affected and just how deeply affected they have been. We're going to continue the conversation with Richard Spoor. When we come back, I'll also play that clip by Tiger Brands, and we'll get Mthokozisi to also weigh in terms of what are some of the lessons really that we should be learning from this particular matter.
Action is getting tougher in the second half of the league. The Folks want to ease off pressure with a win, but the Eagles aim to fly with 3 points to remain in the top 5. This is the Bundesliga, football as it's meant to be. Catch Borussia Mönchengladbach FC versus Eintracht Frankfurt FC on Saturday, 8 February at 7:30 p.m. live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available everywhere, for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Our story is a South African story.
Anchored in the belief that it takes all of us to build a country that thrives.
To educate our children for a brighter future. To care for our health and well-being.
To nurture our environment to sustain future generations. And to transform and build a stronger nation.
When no one is left behind. Inspiring each other to succeed. Anglo-American.
The year has kicked off, and you're like most people, you've spent more time researching resolutions than actually starting. Gym, meal prep, meditation, still deciding. Luckily, getting your car covered online with Santam is faster than picking a resolution to stick to. It only takes 2 minutes to switch. Visit santam.co.za. Santam, this is freedom.
Thank you, Cathy. In the news headlines at 11:30, police say 3 people have been shot dead this morning in Delft. Police spokesperson Andre Trott says officers attended to the crime scene in Gushendoda, where the victims were shot and set alight. Meanwhile, 2 security guards aged 24 and 31 have been killed in a suspected robbery last night in Langa on the Cape Flats. And the Department of Mineral and Petroleum Resources has confirmed that petrol and diesel prices will increase substantially from midnight. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
We continue the conversation on the Talking Point. We are looking at the listeriosis class action, and part of the agreement that has been reached when it comes to the payment of medical bills for some of those who are amongst the claimants, and Tiger Brands agreeing to actually release funds to do that. In fact, I want to play this clip by Joe Ralebeba, who's Chief Legal and Corporate Affairs Officer at Tiger Brands, on this decision.
Even though liability has not been determined and Tiger Brands has no legal obligation whatsoever to provide interim relief at this stage in the class action, the interim advance payment to a number of claimants with urgent needs recognizes the debilitating circumstances in which they find themselves. We are also engaged in discussions to extend the relief to other qualifying claimants who are in a similar position within the confines of the current process. Furthermore, we continue to explore resolution of the class action in its entirety, and we hope to be in a position to make further announcements on this soon. We are particularly pleased to have made progress in our long-standing effort to gain access to the NICD's records relating to their investigation of the listeriosis outbreak. The NICD has agreed to cooperate with us and will be making their records available to the parties as soon as possible. We believe that access to the NICD's records will greatly assist the parties in moving the matter forward. Today's announcement represents an important milestone in the class action.
All right, so the voice there of Joe Ralebeba. Mthokozisi, let me come to you and give you a chance to weigh in. Certainly, Richard is right. I guess when you listen to Joe, with the context of what Richard said, that they've been able to build this relationship of trust between the parties, and there is an acknowledgement of the fact that when it comes to some of these matters, the outcome is not going to change. It's more just an issue of going through the court process. Certainly, the fact that it has been so long, the fact that it has been so difficult, it does leave a bitter taste in one's mouth, right? Because as consumers, people go out to buy the products that they love from the brands that they love, because there is a promise that comes with purchasing that product. One certainly doesn't buy it thinking that they're going to fall ill, let alone risk death.
Indeed, Cathy. That is a major challenge that we are facing in South Africa, especially with diseases such as listeriosis. And looking at the difficulty in detecting or trying to prove that indeed the cause of illness is that specific strain, it is a very complicated process, and one would then expect that it will take this long. But one of the things perhaps that we could learn from this is that compared to other countries, especially the first world countries, South Africa is very much behind, especially with prosecuting companies that would perhaps be found not to comply with the law, or perhaps manufacture product that could make customers sick. To give you an idea, with the Listeria monocytogenes, which is a causative agent for Listeria monocytogenes, or listeriosis rather, it's not something that will instantly, see the symptoms. It has an incubation period, which means that it's the duration it will take that it's in your body or in your system for it to show its symptoms. It can take 3 to 70 days. So it's just a tip of an iceberg. What about somebody who only noticed 70 days later that indeed they were, this is the cause of either their miscarriage or of them being disabled, or perhaps any symptom that they could have experienced. Although we know that the average incubation period is between 1 to 4 weeks or 8 days, but it can last that long. So this is a very good lesson also to food industry, companies, that the time for not taking responsibility is quickly coming to an end. And this particular case has really helped. Unfortunately, that a lot of people got sick and some people died, and of course the neonatal listeriosis that affected the fetuses and obviously the small babies. That is unfortunate, but in the bigger scheme of things, it made people aware that food safety is not a joke. No one goes to a shop to buy food that could, that can make them sick. And the responsibility of ensuring that food is safe needs to be part and parcel of the food industry operations. As we see now, it's not prioritized as much as it should be. Most of the businesses are focused a lot on money, but they're not thinking that the type of product that I'm producing could really have a negative impact on human health. And the listeriosis case is teaching business owners, especially those that care more about money, that in fact your business bottom line can be completely diminished by any food safety incident that could occur.
Part of the picture that has been painted, particularly in the eye of the public, is of a Tiger Brands that is sometimes wanting to absolve itself of responsibility, not necessarily wanting to come up front in terms of how much responsibility it should take when it comes to the claims that are being made against it. In that regard, look, do you think that there are different ways in which corporates can be managing matters of this nature?
Yes, I think the first thing is to really be sympathetic and have that empathy, because people dying, it's not something that should take lightly. And if you saw that interview a few years back when the CEO of Tiger Brands was interviewed, it just lacked that humane reaction to this incident. And one of the things that perhaps the corporate must realize is that food safety or illnesses and these diseases are very emotive. So it can actually destroy the brand, the reputation of the company if they are not dealing with it properly or communicating properly. But also they must consider making sure that if you are in a food business, food, beverage, or anything that people consume, you consider the safety of the product as part of your risk management strategy rather than only focusing on finances. So it has, the approach to the impact, the negative impact of the product that we are producing must really, really be taken into consideration when we look at the organizational risk and make sure that whichever, plan that we enroll, whatever that you do, the suppliers that we get on board, we consider the potential risk that they could have on our business overall. And it must be considered, and I need to stress this, as part and parcel of your operation rather than as operating in a silo, because generally in this industry what we have seen, quality assurance is not treated as seriously as it should be. And I think that is one of the main things that we have observed. But this is a learning curve, and it's a very good step towards ensuring that we see food safety being taken seriously, especially considering the recent events that we have seen throughout South Africa.
Richard, what then become the next steps? Who are the claimants that would be among those considered for some of these payments? Hello, Richard?
Hi, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, and now we can hear you.
Sorry. If I could just touch on one of these things. I mean, if you just look at the timeline of this outbreak, the first sick person that can be clinically linked to the Polokwane facility was identified, and genetic sequencing was done on the 3rd of January, the third week in 2017. The outbreak began gradually thereafter, but already in July 2017, public alerts went out saying, look, we've got a problem. There's an outbreak of listeriosis in the country. It's widespread. It's impacting mainly poor people. It's clearly a mass-produced product that is widely distributed. Please, manufacturers and distributors and retailers and wholesalers, look out for this thing. Start checking. But despite those warnings, the company continued producing contaminated products until it was shut down by the state, by the Department of Health, in March 2018, which is some 8 months later. So what this means is that for well over a year, contaminated products were being manufactured, alerts were being issued, yet the problem wasn't identified and dealt with. And that speaks to the commentary of my fellow guest here, that, something is amiss. We had a good idea what was amiss. This polony is produced from raw materials. These raw materials are often contaminated by listeria and other pathogens. And the bottom line is this product was simply not cooked properly. It wasn't cooked in such a way as to ensure that this bug was killed. The failure to do that is the conduct that led to the extent of this outbreak. We look at the data. Obviously, there's been a lot of information discovered by Tiger about its own production methods and the records that it kept. And it's clear to us that the cooking quality assurance was just not in place. It also appears to us that the cooking data, the temperature data that was being taken, was being manipulated by somebody on the ground there to give a better impression than the truth actually represented. Another point that was made about prosecutions. I mean, we have all these dead people. There hasn't been an inquest. In fact, I'm not even aware that inquest dockets have been opened. We have the 8 kids from Soweto who died late last year from organophosphate poisoning. There's no inquest docket open there. There's no suggestion that a docket has been opened. So there are no prosecutions. There is no law enforcement. Health and safety is monitored and controlled. Food safety is controlled by local authorities. We know that those local authorities are dysfunctional. We know their inspectors don't have the capacity and the resources to do this job. So there's a huge kind of hole in the system. And if you add to that the fact that we just don't, our legal system isn't used to trying these matters, there really is very little accountability in South Africa for this kind of thing.
I mean, Richard, just listening to you speak about the sequencing that was done in 2017 already, that linked some of these cases to the bacteria that was found in the factory, and you look at what's happening today, it almost just feels like a slap in the face, right? Yes, to be welcome that there is progress, but some of these decisions could well have been made 6, 7 years ago.
Yeah, I'm sure that is so. But we're grateful that something's happening, and we're grateful for what Tiger has done. And I concur with their spokesman to say, well, this is a start, and hopefully there's more rapid progress going forward.
So what does this mean then for the claimants that are likely to benefit? Is it a benefit for everybody, or how do you determine who can qualify?
Well, our contention again, it's what we are saying is that, look, let's take all the people that are genetically matched and let's accept that these come from the Tiger factory. Then let's deal with the others where we don't have genetic testing that provides a perfect match. And we've got kind of a hierarchy of proof, if you like. And we're saying, look, let's clear these ones out of the case, out as soon as possible. And if we're left with more difficult cases, people may be infected outside the period where there's no genetic testing, let's deal with those separately. But let's try and clear what we can clear. And that's really what we're hoping to do. So get most of the people out of the way, get the majority out of the way, and let's deal with the rest a little later. It'll take some time, but if we can get rid of a big chunk of these claims, it will make the rest of the process much easier too.
Mthokozisi, let me give you a chance to come in before we wrap things up.
Yes, I think what is important to mention here is that generally in the food industry, there are standards and protocols that are supposed to be implemented. For example, the cooking process, there are temperatures that they are supposed to cook at, and these are supposed to be checked. And I'm pretty sure that the plant in question participated in certification audits and also the inspections. I think what lacks is monitoring, taking it as seriously as they are supposed to, because if you go to the records, you'll see that the cooking process, which is regarded as a critical control point, which means that it's one of the most important steps in any production facility that is making ready-to-eat meals, because there is no further process to eliminate whatever contaminant. So that should have been in place, and that is in place generally speaking. But what lacks is the monitoring of those records to ensure that they are reflecting actually what is happening in the facility. And also, whenever there is a problem, there are protocols that the company is supposed to investigate and ensure that they implement preventive controls. So those protocols and controls are there. There are standards that have been implemented, and also there is something good that came out of this with the regulations that were updated. However, the important point here is that generally the South African government is very good with publishing regulations and standards and protocols, but the enforcement of that is really, really poor, and making sure that the inspectorate that is responsible to enforce that is well capacitated. And I think that's where the problem comes through, because there will be a reaction with the regulation and the standards that must be followed, but you only find that the inspector who's supposed to ensure that this is done according to the standards and regulation is not capacitated to do that. So there is a huge gap in terms of capacity and also the resources that are allocated, because we simply do not have enough. And then you have got a situation where there is no holistic approach to food safety, to regulations. It's just all over the place. And the way I see it now, there will still be such incidents because there is no one really at local level who is really making sure that zooming in and checking if the inspectors that are supposed to do that actually have the capacity. There are shortage of them, and being also located in dysfunctional municipalities doesn't help. You find that in some situations we have got to assist the inspector to interpret the regulation. And the issue that we are also seeing that will come in future, I hope, is the corruption incidences where people can just buy these certificates, or where the inspector sees something wrong and they would demand payments. We've encountered those situations. So until the government realizes that we have got bigger problems, in terms of monitoring, we cannot simply throw people and say, go and inspect without capacitating them and ensuring that they follow the guidelines, they understand what they're supposed to do. We will still have these problems, but we are moving towards a direction where there is some sort of improvement, especially with these incidences happening throughout the country.
All right. Mtokozi Sinkosi, let me thank you for your time. Richard Spoor, let me thank you as well. And of course, all the best to the claimants. You heard how he detailed there just how deeply people's lives have been affected by this. And that's not even counting the over 200 who died as a result of that outbreak. Well, that's where we leave it on the show for today. The Talking Point, back with you again tomorrow between 9 and midday.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Leading the conversation.
The book reading. Please note that the views expressed in this book are not that of the station. Listeners' discretion is advised. SAFM presents another episode of the book These Things Really Do Happen to Me by Kaya Dlanga, read by Lerato Mvelase.
My grandfather and his sister continues. Years later, she was hospitalized in Johannesburg. My cousin Thobeka Dandala, who would later become Makhaula, would pick me up and we would go visit her every day, with pipes all over her face to help her breathe. She was tired and didn't talk much, but Thobeka often speaks about how I would make jokes in the ward and would catch her smiling. She didn't recognize many of the grandchildren who visited. She would always surprise me by remembering me. Kaya letu, she would say, Ewe khulu. Kutheni uguge kangaka mzukulu wami? Why are you so old, my grandchild? Ubufuna ndibe mtsha njengawe mhlawumbe? Did you want me to be as youthful as you are? Ngendamiyeka okay akusebenzise usekangaka nje. I should have let your grandfather work you to death, you naughty child. She would smile and fall asleep. We all knew her long life was soon coming to an end. We could just sense it. One day while I was visiting her at the hospital a week before she passed, she said to me, You know, my child, I realized my mind was not what it used to be when I asked for my brother a few years ago. I was angry because he had stopped visiting me. I was so angry. Then I was told that he had passed away, that I had been at the funeral. I cannot tell you the pain I felt that day, missing my brother and realizing that my mind was also going. I know that it is time for me to go now, to be with my siblings. When you are old, you have no one. You just want to go because you are tired. That broke my heart. I missed them both and their little squabbles. Empathy costs nothing. If you don't come from money, you spend an inexhaustible amount of time just catching up. Every step the haves take is a giant leap for you. Some of my privileged peers have had their parents paying for their rent, apartment, car, education. Even those who have had to work have still had their parents and their home as a safety net. Many others have no safety nets. We, and God's grace, are on our own safety nets. You can't choose whether you're born into a poor or privileged family, but you can choose how you view and understand wealth in the world. The lack of empathy we have for our fellow men is a terrible affliction. I don't get people who laugh at others for being poor or snigger at others for not being on fleek, when that also costs money. Laughing at someone for being broke probably shows how broken you are, and you probably deserve pity too. I remember when I had been working for a few years, a boss of mine asked me, "What do you do with your money? Why don't you have a car? You should have one by now." The tone was already accusatory. He was not asking to understand. He was assuming I was being wasteful with my money. I never did answer him. I did not tell him that I had a mother who didn't work and siblings back home who need to eat and go to school. I could have responded that his children were okay because they had cars he had given them, that his kids did not have to take care of him and his family. Having said that, I was also privileged where I came from. Our family was probably better off than 95% of the other villages. We can't always know where people come from and why they make the choices they make. But it costs nothing to be empathetic and to try to understand. When I fell asleep next to Thabo Mbeki, I tend to have friends who have an inexplicable affection for me. One of those individuals is none other than Nzinga Qunta, a prominent newsreader for the SABC. I had known her for many years. Despite the fact she accused me of once standing her up, I don't believe it because it's just not in me. Nzinga invited me to be part of a group of young people who would meet former President Thabo Mbeki. It was going to be a small group of 20 or so people. When we arrived, there was a big square table, and Nzinga and I decided to sit next to each other because we didn't know anyone else. A gentleman I recognized, I think the former ambassador to the UN, came up to me, shook my hand, then whispered, "The president will sit here next to you. Make sure no one takes the seat." I immediately panicked. I turned to Nzinga, who was on my left. I told her the news I just received. I asked that we exchange seats. She giggled. "No, Kaya." I thought she was joking because who wouldn't want to sit next to a former president and potentially embarrass themselves by saying the wrong things? I know my propensity for saying the wrong thing at the wrong time, and I didn't want this to be one of those occasions. But she refused to switch seats. I tried bribery. I promised to look after her firstborn child. I promised her a salary. I even promised her chocolates. Alas, the sister was too principled. As the clock ticked, I became increasingly nervous, but I acted as calm as I could. The president walked in without any fanfare. When we realized he had walked into the room, we all found ourselves standing. He went straight to the chair next to me. I didn't know if I should introduce myself to him or not. While I was still thinking about what to do, he greeted me, introduced myself nonchalantly, I think. A part of me was hoping I didn't smell like last night's party. A thought that only occurred just as he sat down. Let me now recount the actions I had undertaken that resulted in me falling asleep next to the president. A whole president, guys. I had gone out to party at the residency of the then U.S. ambassador, Donald Gibbs, in Pretoria the night before, which was a Friday. I got home about 5 a.m. that Saturday. I napped the briefest of naps because my cousin, Kolisa, had organized a birthday breakfast for his girlfriend at the beautiful Fairlawns Hotel in Morningside. It began at the crazy and ungodly hour of 7 a.m. Miraculously, I woke up, showered, got dressed, and made it on time. He had also organized some outlandish activity after the breakfast. It was some timed obstacle course. I couldn't believe it. I had hardly slept, and my head was unforgiving. There was no consideration for those of us who had been living our best lives the night before. I was very competitive, even in that state, for reasons I cannot fathom. I managed to finish the obstacle course 20 minutes before everyone else. It was not so much that I was fit or faster. I just didn't want to be late for the president. I suspect everyone else took their time because they had nowhere else to go. It was hot and I was sweating. I rushed home and showered again before picking up Nzinga. We drove together to the Mbeki Foundation. I was excited to meet the man. She knew I was a big fan. So when I sat next to him that day, I had the previous night's party and the physical activities of the morning deeply rooted in my mind. The president briefly began to chat to me. I don't recall what we spoke about. All I was thinking was that I hoped my gum was masking last night's indulgent beverages, and that I wasn't chewing my gum too vigorously.
That was another episode of the book These Things Really Do Happen to Me, written by Kaya Dlanga read by Lerato Mvelase. The book is available online and in all leading bookstores countrywide. It is broadcast on SAFM at 11:45 Monday to Thursdays on The Talking Point. It is produced for the station by Vovi Patala, read by Lerato Mvelase, technical production Wiseman Manele, Nanda Koza, and Tato Mapuruma.
SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation. SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
It's 12 o'clock on Tuesday, the 4th of February 2025. A very warm welcome to Updated Noon here on SAFM, leading the conversation. I'm Sakina Kamwendo. Coming up in the next hour,